Diaspora Relations in the government of Belize, friends, work professional associates, late of Mayor Hines, ladies and gentlemen. The Honorable Ian Goodinegel is going to join us, but will be a bit later. Good evening. I'm Rudon Eversley, and it's my pleasure to warmly welcome you to the launch of My Tourism Journey, Memoir of a Pioneering Barbadian Entrepreneur. Producing this book has been a labor of love for me. It has been in the works for some time. However, recognizing 3 important anniversaries were occurring this year, May has worked tirelessly since February, pulling all the pieces together to bring it to fruition. She hopes that reading the story of her professional journey will give you as much pleasure as she found during her time penning it. Let us formally begin the proceedings now with a word of prayer. And to do so, I call on Father Vibert Stevens, the administrator of St. Patrick's Roman Catholic Cathedral. Father Vibert.
Thank you, and good evening, everyone. In the beginning, when God began to create the earth, it was formless, it was void, and it says darkness covered the whole world. It said the Spirit of God hovered over the darkness, and then God spoke. He said, "Let us." In the book of John, John's Gospel begins, "In the beginning was the Word, and the Word was with God, and the Word was God. He was with God in the beginning. All things came into being through him, and not one thing has been except through him." Every journey begins with a thought, and every thought is placed into action. And today we want to thank God for the effort, for the strength, and for the courage that he has given May Hines in penning this journey, a journey we must all embrace as Barbadian, as Caribbean people, as people of the world. Lord, we thank you for the first thought, the idea that you placed into her mind. We thank you for every word. Like the word of Scripture, you gave her every word so that the word become meaningful. Thank you for giving her the ability to communicate this word through writing, a word of hospitality, a word of welcoming, a word of love. I ask you, dear Lord, to bless this endeavor, that whatever is written will become alive to those who read it, and that in reading they will share the ideas, and that these ideas may become active in the life of our people. That from the experiences of May and her connection with not only our own country, Barbados, but the region and other parts of the world, that as she penned these experiences, through her effort, others may come to see and to understand and to know how we must grow as a people bless her effort, and bless these books that may flourish and that they may become active in the life of our people. We thank you for the blessings we will receive through them. May your word live on in the lives of others. Through Christ our Lord. Amen.
Thank you, Father Vibert. Mr. Michael King is a former Barbados ambassador, permanent secretary, and country representative of the Organization of American States. When he was director of the OS office in the Bahamas, he had the opportunity to work with me on a project. He's here to share his recollections along with those of Mr. Charles Holder, a retired tourism public servant who unfortunately cannot be here this evening. Ladies and gentlemen, I ask you to welcome Ambassador Michael King.
Thank you very much, Roland. Minister Mahler of Belize, Father Vibert, of course, the lady of the hour, May Hines, distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen. I've been given two tasks this evening. The first one is to read the reflections of my former colleague, Charles Holder, who is now retired but had served with distinction in the Ministry of Finance and Economic Affairs of Barbados, as well as the CEO of the Barbados Tourism Investment, Inc. Charles is unable to join us this evening, and he has asked me to read these reflections. Here I go. First of all, I wish to thank May for inviting me to render a few reflections about our professional relationship. I also wish to congratulate her for documenting her tourism journey. And secondly, I wish to say how very pleased I am to be participating in this event alongside Michael, I don't know why, who was my senior at Buxton Boys School. We both benefited significantly from the tutelage of our headmaster, the late William Seymour Arthur, and the excellent teachers at the school. To put this even in context, I go back to 1991-92 when I was asked as a senior project analyst in the Ministry of Finance and Economic Affairs by my then permanent secretary, Mr. Leroy Roach, to take on the responsibility of circulating copies of a draft report of a tourism master plan for Barbados. This circulation was to be directed to a number of public and private sector entities with a view to eliciting their comments for forwarding to the consultants in order for them to prepare their participation, the submission of this final report. The study was undertaken by an American consulting firm, Leventhal and Howarth. Mr. Roach accepted my recommendation that the ministry shall invite the consultants to present their findings, conclusions, and recommendations to a meeting of invited public and private sector stakeholders at a session at the Dendover Convention Center in advance of their submission of their written comments on the draft final report. Quite frankly, I was very uncomfortable with the comments I heard from the representatives of the private and public sector entities who attended the meeting concerning the quality of the work which the consultants did both during and after their presentation. Pursuant to the aforementioned meeting, I discussed my level of discomfort with Mr. Roach, and we both agreed that the ministry shall embark on the path of trying to get more local consultants involved in the work undertaken by overseas consulting firms in future. As a result, the ministry successfully pursued discussions with the international lending agencies with a view to modifying their procurement guidelines as particularly pertain to the evaluation process for the selection and hiring of consultants, to give more weight to the criteria which dealt with the hiring of local and regional consultants and the transfer of knowledge. In addition, the ministry was also able to use moral suasion in its negotiations with overseas consulting firms, with a view also to nudging them towards their hiring of local and regional consultants. Fast forward to 1996 to 98, when I was again given the responsibility of managing a number of feasibility studies which were being undertaken by the Ministry of Tourism and International Transport. These included the redevelopment of the Barbados Hilton, the redevelopment and institutional reform of the airport and seaport, and a broad-based tourism development program. One of the subcomponents of the tourism development program was a study of the small hotel sector in Barbados. We employed the same approach in the evaluation of consultants and the conduct of negotiations with consulting firms as undertaken by the Ministry of Finance and Economic Affairs. Our primary task was therefore to identify local consultants who we could recommend for the consideration of overseas consulting firms to undertake the study of the small hotel sector. Around the same time, I remember very fondly reading an article in the Sunday Sun which spoke to May's involvement with the then Barbados Hotel Association. I contacted the late Cecil Miller, who was a tourism specialist at the Caribbean Development Bank at the time, and he very graciously facilitated the initial contact between May and me to ascertain her interest in being considered by one of the overseas consulting firms. We sent May's CV to the ARA Consulting Group, which was then one of the leading tourism and hospitality consulting firms in Canada, and as they say, the rest is history. Finally, I must express my gratitude to May for allowing me to make a very modest and token contribution towards the development of her career as a professional tourism consultant. In this regard, I do hope that now May has documented her tourism journey, that she will use the information contained therein to encourage and advise as many young Barbadians as possible to consider working in the tourism and hospitality sector as a viable career option. Now, those are the words of Charles Holder. They're not the words of Michael King, but I endorse them 100%. Now, for my own reflection, let me just say that May from the beginning was a trailblazer. I'm not too sure if many people recall when the Barbados Hotel School started at Richmond Gap in St. Michael, sometime around 1965, 66, I'm not too sure. I have a few friends who grew up with me who became bartenders and later general manager of hotels in Barbados. But I remember when they moved to Marine House sometime around 1973. May has documented this, and it was very interesting to see young people who would have migrated from Barbados, who might have gone into other careers, taking on the responsibility of studying hotel and tourism management at a level that we had never had before in Barbados and indeed in the Eastern Caribbean. Like all the other national institutions that were developed in Barbados post-independence, they were all established to assist the countries of the Windward and Leeward Islands, and as far as the Turks and Caicos and Cayman Islands, to send their students to Barbados for training. And this goes beyond Earlston, which was really one of the first programs, UWI, the College of Arts and Science, and the Barbados Hotel School and the Polytechnic, Samuel Jackman Polytechnic. But May has captured her experience in a way that showed how far the Caribbean has come, and in particular Barbados, by focusing on the management and training for small hotels in Barbados and small restaurants and restaurants also. Her role in working as a consultant with the Organization of American States is well documented, and I'm very pleased to see my former colleague Francis Barnett with us. Francis served with distinction in Grenada and here in Barbados for many years as an OAS representative, similar to what I did for 5 years in the Bahamas. And he will have encountered May's outstanding work and meticulous consultancy practice in dealing with a multitude of projects in a multitude of Caribbean countries. Most people do not realize that the Organization of American States had played a significant role in the area of tourism development in Barbados and the Caribbean. And not only did Barbados benefit from projects here in Barbados, but we also contributed an additional like $25,000 US annually through the Caribbean Tourism Research and Development Center, now the Caribbean Tourism Organization, to provide training in the hotel and tourism sector for small enterprises and institutions in the region. I mentioned those projects because they were quite interesting. I can read you a list of some of May's interventions. In Barbados, it was the assistance to small hotels, and through the Small Hotels Assistant Recovery Project, SHARP, and the Intimate Hotels of Barbados. That was done between 1988 and 1994. In St. Vincent and the Grenadines, there was the role of the public sector in tourism development. That was a short-term consultancy in 1991. In the wider Caribbean region, there was a project called the OAS Project on, and Francis, you can recall this, correct me if I'm wrong, the Tourism Plurinational Training of Management Staff in Accommodation and Non-Accommodation Sectors throughout the English-speaking Caribbean. That was from 1990 to 1993. Even in the Cooperative Republic of Guyana, there was assistance to small hotels. That was a one-year consultancy. In St. Lucia, the St. Lucia Hotel and Tourism Association Hotel Management and Marketing Specialists for Small Hotel Programs. That was from 1994 to 95. And there was also the following year, for a period of 15 months, I should say, the Sustainable Tourism Development for Small Properties within the tourism sector in St. Lucia. In Belize, there was the Tourism Plurinational Caribbean Module to assist small local entrepreneurs in preparing for Belize's first international trade show. That was a short-term assignment, Minister Mala, and that was in 1996. And when you look at the whole Caribbean region, 14 OAS member countries, she did the Caribbean Tourism Competitiveness and Sustainability Program for small hotels between 1997 and 2000. And of course in St. Kitts. This was very important to the development of tourism training in St. Kitts. There was the Tourism Training and Certification Program from 2005 to 2006. May's contribution, not only to Barbados, but the Caribbean, has left an indelible mark in the area of training and management of small hotels. I encountered May in the Bahamas, in Nassau, in 1992, and I think I could still find a photograph at home with Vincent Borrell and Danielle Knowles, who was an official in the Ministry of Tourism of the Bahamas, and her family owned a small hotel, I remember very well, and May was the go-to person who came up to Nassau and taught many people how they shall manage their small properties. And that's a sector, tourism in Barbados and the Caribbean, that has been neglected. Most people like massive infrastructure, big buildings, and high-end projects and so forth. But they're the people who invested their little earnings and their little capital in making tourism work in the Caribbean, because invariably they were able to sustain a long tradition of excellence and service, and keeping the tourism model in Barbados and the Caribbean somewhat indigenous in key areas. I think her understanding to push the need for institutional and human capacity building among small hotels in Barbados is well documented in the book. And I must say that at every turn in reading this book, one would see that she focused on the basics all the time. And if you look at the 12 takeaway points that she wrote at the end of the book, it will tell us what drove her in her quest for excellence and which caused her to reap great success. She has been able to document and record her experiences in a way that simplifies making common sense decisions without gimmickry and without idle promises. And I think the fact that she served so long in that capacity in the Caribbean was testament to the qualities as a person and her love and commitment to the cause of tourism development and training in the Caribbean and Barbados. I remember my primary school teacher, who happened to be my godmother, telling me at a very young age that success lies not in doing what one likes, but in liking what one does. And I think that my tourism journey, a memoir of a pioneering Barbadian entrepreneur, clearly reflects the love that May Hines had for tourism and tourism management. And I recommend that you all buy a copy of the book, read it, make gifts of it, and as I finish my few minutes in my reflections of May's encounters with me as a professional, as a friend, I wish you well and congratulate you on an outstanding documentation of your work in the area of tourism in Barbados and the Caribbean. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Ambassador King. Now, the next person I'm going to bring to the podium needs little introduction. You have known her as she served for the past 4 decades as a consultant and in other roles helping to build tourism success, not only here in Barbados, but in 19 countries across the Caribbean. She's the star attraction tonight, the person whom we are celebrating, the author of My Tourism Journey, Memoir of a Pioneering Caribbean Entrepreneur. I ask you to please welcome Ms. May Hines.
Good evening, everyone. I wish to thank all of you from the bottom of my heart for coming to share this special moment with me, especially those of you who have journeyed from abroad and had to make an extra effort to be here, considering the challenges with air travel since COVID. In this regard, I wish to single out the Honorable Anthony Mailer, Minister of Tourism and Diaspora Relations in the government of Belize. We have known each other professionally for over 20 years. And when I told him a month or so ago that I was writing my memoir, he spontaneously replied in typically Bajan hospitality, "Miss May, I will be there for the launch." He is our featured speaker this evening. It was the intention of his dear wife, Melissa, to be also here. However, urgent professional commitments at the last minute forced a change of plan. If you're watching online, Melissa, we miss you. Having you in person, but are happy to have you still join us. I also want to mention my dear friend, Miss Carol Guntley. Everybody see that lady sitting behind my daughter, Joanne? Carol is retired Director General of Jamaica's Ministry of Tourism and former Director of Jamaica Tourist Board. Whenever the full story of Jamaica's tourism success is written, the name Carol Guntley will feature prominently. Come. Carol is a special person. I met her during the initial stages of my professional journey. As I looked in the late 1980s to spread my wings beyond Barbados, work-wise, she gave me my first big break. Since that assignment in Jamaica, I have had the honor to work on tourism-related projects in 18 other Caribbean countries. I wish to thank our Minister of Tourism, Honorable Ian Gooding-Edgell. Ian did call to say I'm running late, but I want to thank him for agreeing to be here, and hopefully he'll be along shortly. I also acknowledge the presence of Renee Coppin. Where is Renee? Right, Chairman, Barbados Hotel and Tourism Association. There are many friends and associates and family, both here and around the world, who would have loved to be here in person. However, through the modern marvel of live streaming, they are with us virtually. I wish to give them a big shout out. Rita Branch in Grenada, 100 years old. Yes, social media enthusiast. The first manager I worked with, right, when I went into the hotel sector. There's Hyacinth here, there's Frank, Ann, White, and Denique, and there are many others. I welcome all of you. Finally, I wish to acknowledge the exceptional generosity of the Most Honorable Peter Odell. Peter Odell in the room? He isn't here yet, okay. Peter is, of course, the owner of this renowned Island Heritage Small Hotel. What really stands out in my mind about the Island Inn is how it has been able to retain its authentic Barbadian character. Thanks to Shireen, Tora, and staff for the excellent arrangements for this evening. My tourism journey, Memoir of a Pioneering Entrepreneur, is the first book I have penned. It is essentially autobiographical, capturing more than 3/4 of my life. It tells the story of my journey transforming people, tourism, and other business organizations in 19 countries over the past 4 decades. Dear God, I thank you. It is about my passion for making organizations winners through embracing and practicing service excellence. Champer's Restaurant and Wine Bar is one good Barbadian example. Service excellence is particularly important in our Caribbean context, considering that we are largely now a services-driven economy. Unfortunately, among some of our people, delivering excellence in service, which is so critical to the success of any industry or business, is still mistakenly equated with servitude. This book is the story of triumph over setbacks. The story of a journey anchored in a deep inner faith, knowing that God was accompanying me, and that with him as my guide, and also confidence in my abilities, I would eventually win. Father Vibert, as always, thank you. This evening, therefore, is about more than the launch of a book. It's a celebration of what I have been able to accomplish, particularly the fact that after 4 decades, I am still standing. To quote the title of Elton John hit song. Why y'all look so stiff though? We the Caribbean, right? Yeah, man. All right. This book launch coincides with the 50th anniversary of my graduation in the first cohort of the Barbados Hotel School. Michael talked about that. 2 days after the day, to be exact. It also coincides with the 70th anniversary of the Barbados Hotel and Tourism Association, and right, I heard last night, Went real well. Congrats, yeah. Now, the BHTA is this island's main private sector tourism entity, which I have had a close association. Quite significantly, too, it occurs exactly on what would have been the 120th birthday of one of the 4 strong women who shaped my life and who you'll read about in the book. I speak of none other than Mary Edwardina Jackman, whom we affectionately call Jack. She, along with the other 3, including my late mother, is frequently mentioned in the book. Thanks, Gloria, for the reminder of the significance of December 10th, Jack's birthday. My interest in pursuing a career in tourism and hospitality was sparked in the late 1960s. It was a result of a conversation I overheard one evening while visiting the Black Rock home of another aunt, Annie Augusta Jones. We affectionately called her Tanty. That evening, she was entertaining 2 prominent Barbadian personalities who were her neighbors, the then Prime Minister and now the Right Excellent Errol Walton Barrow and his wife Carolyn. While they were chatting at the dinner table, I was in the nearby living room. In keeping with the custom at the time, children were kept out of big people's business. However, I could clearly hear what was being discussed. I listened intently as Mr. Barrow passionately outlined his development plans for our newly independent island. What he had to say about tourism and the central role it would play immediately captured my attention and interest. I was then deputy head girl of the Alexandra School, looking to graduate in another year and contemplating career options. Mr. Barrow was so passionate in presenting his vision for the industry that I was convinced it was the path for me to pursue as it represented the future. It led to my enrollment 2 years later in the first batch of students who entered the then Barbados Hotel School. I graduated years later with a diploma in middle management with credit. When I revealed my intention, my career choice immediately encountered some opposition. Some persons, including relatives, thought I was crazy and tried to discourage me. As they saw it, working in tourism was not for a bright Alexander girl like me. A traditional career like nursing, banking, teaching, or in the civil service was considered more respectable and appropriate. I was even told in one instance that I would only go as far as being a hotel receptionist. Such was the myopia which then prevailed. The course of history, however, proved them wrong. Tourism soon took off, soared, and is today the leading economic driver in most Caribbean countries. It has replaced traditional industries like sugar, in our case, and also bananas, which are almost gone. The past 50 years in tourism has therefore been a satisfying and exciting journey for me. I was an eyewitness and an active participant in a period of fundamental change here in Barbados and our region. I give God thanks and to everyone who helped me along the journey as I reflect on that life-changing evening at Tanty's home. The transformational leader Errol Barrow stands out like a beacon. He not only had a vision, he also understood the mission and how it could be achieved through having the right persons occupying key roles. Mr. Barrow often spoke of a desire to see Barbadians eventually in control of what he used to call the commanding heights of the economy. In the case of tourism, he began the process by preparing Barbadians to assume middle management positions as the first step towards reaching the top. Mr. Barrow was quite strategic in his approach. 50 years on, I am disappointed that not enough progress has been achieved in this regard. There are lots of highly trained and skilled Barbadians on the labor market. Barbadians capable of leading tourism enterprises anywhere in the world. Yet from time to time, we see advertisements in the press which speak of an inability by some tourism employers to find suitably qualified Barbadians to fill top management positions. We have said for years that tourism is our business. Let's play our part. We must be more mindful of the silent message being repeatedly sent to bright and talented Barbadians. This certainly would not happen on such a scale in some neighboring destinations in Jamaica, for example. Tapping indigenous talent as much as possible has been a key ingredient in their tourism success. Correct, Carol Guntley? Y'all can't see it, but she's telling me, she's nodding, right. We can certainly do better. Barbados has been in the tourism business now for more than 50 years. We are considered a mature destination. From time to time, during the course of a journey, it is necessary to pause, reflect, and engage in a strategic refocus. I have had to do so a few times along my journey. I think such an exercise is now badly needed if Destination Barbados is to reap continued success going forward. There's a need to refresh the industry to place it on a more modern footing. It is important in such an exercise that the Ministry of Tourism is reorganized to strengthen its role as a national policy maker. It needs to be seen again in a more assertive leadership role, driving the industry. It often appears as if the BTMI, which is subordinate to the ministry, is in the driver's seat. Yet a humble suggestion based on observations from quite a few industry watchers. Friends and colleagues, writing a memoir can be just a daunting undertaking. It took me 5 years putting it down, going back to it. The last chapter was written in my friend's, the White's home in Canada about 2 years ago. But completing and publishing, I guess it's an achievement worth celebrating as we are this evening. I've always had a desire to share my story so that others, especially those on a similar path, can take away something from my experience, however small it may be. Why do I consider this important? Because the wisdom of the book of Ecclesiastes in the Bible reminds us, and I quote, "What has been is what will be, and what has been done is what will be done. And there is nothing new under the sun." By sharing our experiences with those coming after us, we can empower them and help them to avoid some of the pitfalls we encountered on our journey. Life on this earth is similar to a never-ending relay race in which the baton is continuously passed from one generation to the next. There are many of you in this audience with inspiring stories to tell, not only about your career journey, but also life experiences. They could very well be a source of encouragement for someone out there on a similar journey and yearning for success. Instead of taking your story to the grave, as so many in our region have done, I want to encourage you to write, publish, and share your story. I have done it, and so can you. Now you may ask how to begin. My first challenge was acknowledging and recognizing the limitations of my skills as a writer. Many of you are probably in the same boat. I therefore had to find someone with first-class writing and editing expertise. Fortunately for me, I knew someone who perfectly fitted the description, and he readily offered to help. In fact, he was the one who, on discovering my story, encouraged me to write. That person is my good friend, Rudon Eversley. See this gentleman here? Please recognize him. Benefiting from Rudon's guidance and expertise throughout this project made the task easy, straightforward, and enjoyable. Drawing on his media and communication training and decades of experience as a journalist, newsroom executive, and strategic communication advisor, Rudon made producing this book seem so simple. I provided the raw material. He did the rewriting, the editing, providing the structure, and recommended the title. Dr. Stacy Denny, who I believe is viewing, hello Stacy, did the proofreading. When I submitted a completed manuscript to Miller Publishing, where is Keith Miller? Keith said it was one of the best he had received in his years in the business. Right, Keith? Correct. Did we quote you correctly? Absolutely. Lovely. So much so that hardly any corrections were necessary, and Keith asked if he could use the manuscript as a best case example in one of his workshops for aspiring writers. So Rudon, I'm greatly indebted to you, as well as to Miller Publishing, especially young Erin Brewster. Where is Erin? Right, back there somewhere, right. Who did the layout and design? And of course, the accomplished Mark Maynard. Where's Mark Maynard? Right, my cousin. And Mark, of course, designed the cover. Together, you have delivered a work of excellence. In closing, I give God thanks for this special moment, which I will forever cherish. And I simply wish to say to everyone, every one of you, everybody in this room is special. Clients, friends, relatives, colleagues, service providers, thank you, and again, thank you. That's it, people.
Thank you, May. And will you give me another round of applause? May, it was a pleasure working with you. As you know, I don't work with a lot of people. So you are unique, right? And it was a very enjoyable experience. I learned a lot, and we could do it again. Yeah. I should also say you're encouraging people to write. Yes. I'm in the process. In fact, I put it on pause during that time. I'm writing my journalism memoirs, telling the story of my experiences, and also one of the best kept secrets in the Caribbean, which is the story of the Caribbean News Agency, where I had the privilege to serve for a while as Director of News and Current Affairs. CANA was highly rated internationally. In fact, it's considered the best news agency to have emerged in the developing world within the context of what was called the New World Information and Communication Order, which basically sought to decolonize information and to give developing countries the capacity to tell their own stories instead of relying on the developed world to tell the story of developing countries. And I'm working on a second book on politics in the Caribbean. So I'm following in your I'm following your advice, May. Good. Ladies and gentlemen, Belize is the only English-speaking country in Central America. Though it is continental, it considers itself very much a part of the Caribbean. In fact, it is a member of CARICOM. Belize is also a rapidly growing tourist destination. I was doing some research online, and they said considerable growth was achieved in the last few years. So much so that the industry is now the country's second largest. Since his election 2 years ago, the Honorable Anthony Maller has taken responsibility for charting the direction of the industry as Minister of Tourism. To deliver the feature address, please give a warm Bajan welcome to the Honorable Anthony Maller, Minister of Tourism and Diaspora Relations in the Government of Belize.
Good night, everybody. Thanks for that warm welcome, Mr. Master of Ceremonies. Now, 25 years or so ago, when I first met Miss May, we were in a room just like this, in front of a bunch of people launching the Small Hotels project in Belize. And I was a shy, young professional then, and she threw me on the podium and said, say a few words. Well, that helped me now as a politician a little bit, so I speak a little bit better now in front of crowds. And then when I was sitting there tonight, I said, I'm still a bit nervous to speak in front of Miss May, but I had a warm Barbadian welcome when everybody came 15 minutes late. So I said, I'm good, I'm just like home. Ladies and gentlemen, distinguished guests, we have a Belize City Councilor here from Belize, Mr. Micah Gooding, joining us here tonight. He's studying law at Cave Hill. Distinguished guests, good evening. It is indeed an honor and a pleasure for me to be here in Bridgetown, Barbados, to share in such a momentous occasion. Tonight is a celebration of a life's work in tourism, and by extension, the development of the Caribbean by an extraordinary human being. Today is a celebration for a truly remarkable Caribbean woman who has been blazing trails in tourism and the services sector for close to 50 years now. She has trained, mentored, assisted many individuals across the Caribbean on what it takes to excel at all levels and at all times. Ms. May, on behalf of Melissa and my family and the country of Belize, congratulations to you on the launch of your book, My Tourism Journey, Memoir of a Pioneering Barbadian Entrepreneur. You said first book, so I believe you want to publish a few more? Joanne says stress. I am proud to say that I know you and that I have learned from you. I'm also glad that I'm able to be here today with your family and friends to celebrate your contribution to tourism and hospitality development in the Caribbean for the past 5 decades. I met Ms. May in 1998 when she was working with Belize and other Caribbean countries on an OAS program for small hotels as a regional project coordinator. I will never forget that program, as it was my first professional experience in the tourism industry, which then led me to become the product development director at the Belize Tourism Board many years ago. The project was developed to assist small local entrepreneurs in improving their operations. It involved all 14 OAS member states and 1,200 small hotels across the region, comprising of over 16,000 rooms. Today, just like back in 1998, Belize's accommodation sector is comprised primarily of small hotels, with an average of 10 rooms per property. Even today, about 80% of the accommodation sector in Belize is under 20 rooms. So I remain very conscious of the importance and relevance of supporting our small hotels. I must say that my work experience under Ms. May's leadership form a part of my foundation and influence my long-term perspectives and views of the tourism industry, of being a professional, and just life in general. As a young professional, Ms. May's guidance definitely impacted my career development, leading to my current role, Belize's Minister of Tourism and Diaspora Relations. Ms. May leads by example, and from day one, I saw her true passion and love for the tourism industry and her commitment to excellence. Please give her a round of applause, I think. She was and still is a consummate professional. Ms. May works with a laser beam focus and with a level of meticulousness only rivaled by my wife, who is a UE-trained attorney and who claims to have a mild case of OCD. Ms. May is an advocate for Barbados, the Caribbean, and all our people. I have known Ms. May for about 25 years, and during that time, we've had conversations about who we are as individuals, what moors us, and who has helped along the way to mold us. Well, it is clear in the acknowledgments of the book that her mother, Miss Annie Gertrude Aline, who lived to be almost 100 years old, and who was a tourism pioneer in Barbados as well, helped to mold Miss May. The book says, this fiercely independent woman who has an unmistakable flair for fashion taught me at a tender age to think outside the box, to be always true to myself, to show respect for everyone, that is true, but I'm going to get on twisted because she can't tell you what's on her mind, and to stand up for what I believe in. I highlighted these words in the book because they truly encapsulate Miss May Hines. Tourism impacts our region significantly and can bring our people out of poverty, create tremendous opportunities, and enable higher standards of living. However, the key is to strike a delicate balance between economic growth, social development, cultural perseveration, and environmental stewardship. I want to take this opportunity to congratulate the island of Barbados on the significant work it is doing to rebound after the COVID-19 pandemic. Last week, I had the pleasure to meet my colleague, your new Minister of Tourism, the Honorable Ian Gooding-Edghill, at the WTTC's Global Leadership Summit in Riyadh, Saudi Arabia. Minister, if you was here, I look forward to working with you to help rebuild CTO and to ensure that we humans don't destroy the wonders of the world that God has blessed us with. It would be remiss of me not to say a few words about my country, Belize. I am pleased to report that Belize is almost back to 2019 levels in tourism, and we're expecting a strong rebound year in 2023. For those of you who have not visited Belize, I invite you to experience my country. We have the longest barrier reef in this hemisphere, and we say the longest living barrier reef in the world. So Australia can move over, eh? Perfect for snorkeling, diving, and fishing. We have the longest cave system in Central America and the world's first jaguar preserve. We have tropical jungles and natural forests ideal for hiking and birdwatching. We're also located in the heart of the ancient Maya civilization with a wide diversity of cultures living in harmony. Like our anthem says, we have been blessed with wealth untold. So I personally invite you to come experience my home, Belize. We can't wait to share our warm Belizean hospitality with you. And many of the people in Belize have been trained by Miss May and Miss Carol. So I was fortunate to have two great mentors as I started my journey through tourism. And that has helped me as minister in making the right decisions for my country over the past 2 years. With all the natural wealth that we've been blessed with, we know the next step for us in Belize is to elevate our service excellence. This is another area that I know is of utmost importance to my friend May Hines. Part of the work that we do in the industry is to bring across the message that excellence in service is the art of consistently meeting and regularly exceeding a customer's expectation. Belizeans are friendly, and we love to share our culture and history with visitors. This is true for all of us in tourism across the Caribbean and Central America. For all of us working in tourism, we love what we do. We can support each other and learn from each other. That is what I did when I worked closely with May Hines in the early years of my career. And like she drilled into my head, we always have an opportunity to learn more, prepare ourselves better, build capacity, increase competency, and deliver higher levels of service day in, day out. However, we are, and whatever we do, let us always look to being the best we can be. So I invite everyone to read carefully and take heed to the great words of wisdom that you will surely find in Miss May's memoir. Her tourism journey is surely one to be admired. I want to again congratulate you, Ms. May, on your immense accomplishments. Sincere thanks for the invitation to give some comments here tonight. Thank you for the work that you do on behalf of all of us. You have been and continue to be an inspiration, and I'm thankful that our paths crossed so many years ago. So in closing, I would like to share a few words from the book, a book that I like, Servant Leadership in Action. When people lead at a higher level, they make the world a better place, because in addition to results and relationships, their goals are focused on the greater good. This requires a special kind of leader, a servant leader. Ms. May Hines has been and is a true servant leader. Let's follow her lead and let's make the world a better place. I thank you and good night.
Thank you, Minister Miller. Please give him another round of applause. Linda, wherever you are, could you please come to me? May. Thanks. Miller Publishing, managed by the husband and wife team of Keith and Sally Miller, as you heard, was instrumental in getting this book on the market. They did an exceptional job, and special thanks go particularly to Erin Brewster. To give a few remarks, please welcome Ms. Sally Miller.
Protocol having been established. Good evening, distinguished guests, friends and family of May. I'm honored to have been asked by May to say a few words at her celebration this evening. Indeed, we felt honored to be asked by May to produce her book. I've never worked with May, but her excellent reputation, I knew that the job would be a joy because it would be presented in an efficient manner, and May would be a pleasure to work with. Well, as she alluded to before, to use a service mantra that she's used many times, May exceeded our expectations. It was exquisitely presented, and yes, a joy to work with. When we began working on the book, and we saw this young chick with her black afro, a hairstyle that she and Tanti nearly came to blows over. Yeah. I found myself humming that tune that Nina Simone made famous. Young, gifted, and black. I said to my daughter, I'm going to sing, and she said, no, Mom, please don't sing. May felt good about herself, a gift probably from those strong ladies, and she manages to make other people feel good about themselves. An infectious enthusiasm. In her first chapter, she begins with a famous quote by Maya Angelou. People may forget what you say, may forget what you do, but they never forget how you make them feel. I'm sure that this book will make many up-and-coming young people, especially women, but not only women, especially in the Caribbean, but not only the Caribbean, feel good about themselves and get a strong sense of the possibilities and the possibilities in tourism. it was great to read a book with words like cat spraddle in it. Caribbean people can relate to your writing. Eventually, we will make this book digital so that people everywhere will be able to easily access this inspiring story told by an inspiring lady. Thank you, May, for making this huge effort to produce this book. And thank you for allowing us to work with you. It felt good.
Thank you, Sally. As you've heard, various persons have contributed to making this event successful and a memorable one, beginning because of this book. To recognize their contribution, I now invite Mrs. Joanne Rowett, the daughter of May, to move the vote of thanks.
Good night, all. All formalities having been well established, you may now think that I have the easiest task tonight. But if most of you know my mother, this too must be perfect, right? So, I was scripted, but I've made it Joanne, and she doesn't know what's here. So wish me the best. Anyway, let us begin first of all by thanking the Almighty God, as Mommy puts God first in everything she does. We thank God for bestowing on her countless blessings, the gift of life, these life experiences, good health, and time to write this memoir, her ultimate dream goal having now been realized. My role tonight is quite simple, and it's to say thank you to everyone who's contributed in some way to making this evening's event, the success it's been. I'm truly moved by the tremendous expression of appreciation shown here this evening. I'll go between May and Mommy, because I call her May sometimes. Y'all can imagine when that is. May has worked relentlessly and tirelessly, my words, over the years as a tourism builder, pillar, and an inspiration to many throughout the Caribbean, as we heard from Minister Mala tonight. This is her moment. But before I say thank you to the participants and the attendees, I first have to say thank you to her past and my matriarchs as well in the family, who inspired her to be who she is. And you've heard of them briefly tonight. That's my Nana, her mum, Tanti, her godmother, Jack, the resident other mother, all three sisters, okay? That were truly inspirational to all of us in the family, really, as well as Nancy Elson, her AFS mother in Iowa, all the way to Iowa. So when we hear about this Afro, she and Tanti came to high words because she's Black, you know her, she's strong. Had her Afro, she was not changing it for the world, and went to Leon, Iowa, in the back of wherever, full of snow, right? And Tanti was like, nope, and she was like, yes, and so it went. So, 4 exceptionally strong women, now deceased, but very, very present in Mommy's journey. Thanks to our featured speaker, the Honorable Anthony Mahler, Minister of Tourism and Diaspora Relations of Belize. You have honored Mommy with your kind words and your presence tremendously. The tourism people of Belize bestowed upon May a distinguished recognition in hospitality. And I really can't thank you enough. I mean, it was very humbling to hear of the award, you know, that you have after her in Belize. And we thank you for being here tonight. I would also like to thank Mrs. Renee Coffin, Chairman of the BHTA, Barbados Italian Tourism Association, for those of you viewing virtually, for your attendance. Another strong female incumbent, right, in the industry. Thanks to Father Vibert Stevens for leading us in prayer, Ambassador Michael King for sharing his recollections and reading those of Mr. Charles Holder. Thank you for your professional relationships with Mummy. Thank you, Sally and Keith Miller, right? And your team at Miller Publishing, especially Aaron Brewster, who I met tonight, for producing a masterpiece, which me is so very, very proud of. Profound thanks to Rudon Eversley for serving not just as tonight's MC, but helping Mummy to make this memoir dream a reality. Let's just say I can only imagine the amount of calls and emails and text that has ensued during this time. Thank you for your patience, Rudon. Thank you.
I know me very well.
Very good. Yes. Also, thank you to the Most Honorable Peter Odell, a most distinguished hotelier, as well as Shireen Mathlin Tulloch and Thora Brown, hotel manager at Island Inn that you've met tonight, for the excellent arrangements and assistance in coordinating tonight's event. To the staff of Island Inn as well too, thank you for your service tonight. Thanks to Ricky Redman and his team for coordinating the live stream, Maurice Giles for photography, Jasonta Bowen, excuse me, thank you. Jasonta Bowen for her digital marketing of the book, Linda Johnson, and of course, May's Heartstrings, Jaden and Nathan Rowett, that you met, for welcoming you tonight, and members of the media for your interest. Last but not least, a big thank you to every one of you for your attendance, whether physically or virtually, and showing your support and appreciation. We are indebted to you. I'm going to invite you to mingle. For those of you that have pre-ordered a book, these can be collected before you leave tonight. Signed copies are also available for purchase. I have to put that in there, of course. If Minister Goodenagel joins us, but if he does join us, just note that Minister Mala may need to excuse himself for a short while to have a private discussion with him, and please just allow them some privacy at that point in time. Finally, when you depart, I ask that you please travel safely. Thank you again, good night, and truly wishing you a wonderful festive season. Thank you.
Refreshments will be served, and we ask that you remain seated before they mix and mingle while we find out if the folks are ready to begin service. Thank you very much. And thank you, Joanne.
Thank you, Joanne. Thank you, Joanne.